Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to The Sanctuary. I'm your host, Professor C, and today we're going to look at some more A and P, specifically some bones. More specifically, we're going to check out the mandible, or sometimes it's called the dentary bone. Let's jump in. Okay, so here we have one of the easier bones to deal with in the human body, which is the mandible, also known as the dentary bone. So it's the lower movable jawbone. The really only problem here is people forget which one of those processes that are sticking out is the one that connects to the, well, to the cranium, right, to the rest of the skull. So the TMJ would be here. I can kind of sketch it here. I'm not going to draw it perfectly, of course. I'm just going to say there's where you would find the temporomandibular joint. And remember, this temporomandibular joint is formed as the mandible sits into the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. And if you need more specifics on that, go back and check out the video I have on the temporal bone, and you'll see where that structure is located. And it is the TMJ, as you probably heard it called before. The temporomandibular joint is the only freely movable joint in the skull. Thank goodness, right? We don't want our skull bones moving around as a general rule. But this, of course, allows the jaw to swing at that back pivot point and lets us chew our food. So the mandibular condyle, I'll put MC, is that bony process that sticks into the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone to create the TMJ, or the temporomandibular joint. The front process is the CP. It's known as the coronoid process. Coronoid, again, oid shaped like corona, meaning a crown, shaped like a crown. Think of a tooth crown instead of like a crown on the king's head, maybe. It doesn't look like a crown to me, but I'm not the guy that named it, right? So mandibular condyle in the back, and sometimes it is called the condyloid process, which I think is a bizarre term for it, but you may hear that out there. Mandibular condyle is the one in the back, posterior, and the coronoid process is the one in the front. In between them is a little, looks like a place where you can sleep in here. This is called the mandibular notch, right there, in between those two bony processes. Now the ramus is a word that means a branch. Sometimes you see it meaning an arm. So this, what I'm drawing hashes on, this part that's kind of sticking down like this broad flat area, that's called the ramus. So I'll just put a big R here. Ramus, the ramus. Plural would be rami, the two rami of the mandible. Mandibular rami. The angle, of course, is probably what you think it is. Down here it's got this, well, this angle. I'll put an A here. And that's just the name for it, the ramus and the angle. And that takes us over to where the teeth are. So we see a mandibular foramen, but be careful. The mandibular foramen is not that hole on the chin. The mandibular foramen is on the inner portion, the medial portion of the ramus. So I'm going to circle it over here on this ramus so we can see it. There's the mandibular foramen. And I'm going to write that out, M-A-N-D, if it'll let me, mandibular foramen. Got it. Now, so what the heck then is this one called on the chin? Well, a strange word, not really, but most people are curious when they see it. It's called mental. Mental refers to the chin. I know you've heard of like a mental disorder and may think that has to do with the brain, but mental can be a word for chin. Think about someone thinking, right? And they put their hand on their chin. And that used to be kind of a sign of intelligence for people to grab their bony chin and look off into the distance and think about something. So the word mental and chin, you could see how it kind of developed into this word that had something to do with thoughts. And there you go. Let me put a mental here so we don't lose our minds when we get those confused. But that's the mental foramen, mandibular foramen on the inside of the ramus. The only other thing we need to mention here are these, watch where I'm drawing, these bumps where the teeth are stuck into the bone. You may call those tooth sockets, kind of in a vernacular, but I'm going to call them APs. Those are the alveolar processes where the teeth fit in. Which other bone will probably have alveolar processes? Well, probably the top jawbone known as the maxilla, which we'll get to very soon. All right, if you enjoyed the talk on that bone, Thanks for watching it for once, and check out some more. I got a bunch. See you later. Bye-bye.